I've been to juvenile hall, and it's like a prison when you're inside there. It feels like a prison, looks like a prison. Kids get drugs in there, and it's just, when I see stuff like that, I get this feeling that it's like the government's trying to set us up to just be ready, when we get older.
We live in a country that tends to rely on incarceration as the main method of crime control. We are building more and more juvenile beds at a time when juvenile crime is dropping.
And as we are in the 21st century, the design flaws continue to reveal themselves. And the more crowded it is, the more difficult it is to manage kids there.
One of the most basic principles of child development is that drawing children into this system isn't good for them.
One kid said, he was asked, how do you think the system sees you? And he said, like a piece of garbage. And I think that comes from not listening to young people.
Just think about us, it's like you're making decisions for us, from our well-being. You don't know me, I don't know you. You don't know us. You don't know people out in the community. You don't know them. Educate yourselves. Then you can really start making those right decisions for me or for anybody else in the same struggle.
Historically, juvenile detention has been the least addressed component of the whole juvenile justice system. Each year, about 600,000 children are admitted to secure detention centers. 2/3 of those kids will enter places that are overcrowded and therefore can't provide the kinds of custody or care that the law and professional standards demand. About 2/3 of those children are kids of color, wildly disproportionate to their presence in the population in general. It's also important to understand that kids who go through this system in this manner will have much worse life outcomes than kids who are not arrested, are not detained, are not separated from their families and their communities.
I think this is an outgrowth of what happened during the 80s and 90s, where the attitude throughout the country was lock them up and throw away the key. Perception that they're predators out in the streets.
But we're starting to realize that that doesn't work. We have too many kids locked up. The taxpayers are paying a lot of money for that, and they're not safer.
There's a growing recognition that our juvenile halls are filled with kids with mental health issues, with special education needs, with substance abuse problems. There's a growing population of girls who come from the dependency system with abusive backgrounds.
2 out of 3 children in detention in the United States are in overcrowded facilities. We've got overcrowded classrooms, we've got overcrowded hospitals, but nobody's talking about expanding those. But when we have overcrowded jails, prisons, and detention centers, suddenly all these government officials want to expand them to make it better for the kids and the adults there, when really, we need to be expanding the things that would prevent people from ending up there in the first place.
We are as political as any city in the United States. We're a very large urban center with 6 million people. We're the largest single-site juvenile detention center in the United States.
Our detention center was built in '73, and we have a capacity of 498 children. And at the time it was built, our thought was we'll never fill it. This center will never be filled. It just has so many beds. How could we possibly fill them all? Well, in February of '96, we had 840 children in custody.
At that time, the population was very heavily black, as it is today. And there was long stays that kids were spending in the detention center, and sometimes for things that we didn't think justified it.
kids that come to our court system have a lot of issues that are challenging them, and it's very difficult for our kids. They're dealing with a ton of issues that I didn't have to deal with.
There's just a lot of things going on that makes it unsafe in the community. People selling drugs and fighting or gang violence or things of that nature.
Kids have problems crossing turfs. Sometimes going from school to home can be a major challenge for some young people.
Our office hours were such that we concluded business by 5 o'clock every day and didn't work evenings or weekends. And these were the times that the kids in the community needed guidance and supervision.
Here in Multnomah County, we had a system that had some strengths, but it was a very disorganized system. I think a lot of decisions were made based upon entrenched past practice that was unexamined.
There was an obvious disconnect among all these organizations. And the one thing that was not happening is that we were not serving the kids in our community.
We sued Multnomah County because the conditions in the detention facility were pretty deplorable. Overcrowding. The kids were in rooms that had exposed water pipes that the youth often would break as defiance measures, so the rooms were often flooded. The youth didn't have access to bathrooms unless the staff let them out of rooms, so a lot of times the youth would just go to the bathroom in the rooms.
We had very few alternatives to detention. We decided who would be held in detention mainly on a gut level feeling and on experience, but lots of times we had no place to put them, even if we knew they should not be in the facility.
There were a lot of problems, and our system lost credibility as a result of that, and we're still recovering from a perception that the juvenile system is broken.